Hello and welcome everybody. This will be Merlini's Mailbag episode 8. And the first question that I thought was pretty good this week, and I've seen a recent surge in popularity, has to deal with Armlet and Sylla. Again, I'm still working on the production value of this weekly show. But anyways, here's the question. Sylla is one of the most picked and most versatile carry heroes in the current metagame, but only recently has Armlet become a very common item in pro games. The bear interaction with Armlet was unknown to me before pro players started using Armlet on their bears, but now that I understand what the Armlet does, my question is, what about it is so appealing? And is it because of its efficiency? Is Maelstrom not better? And what should you pretty much do with an Armlet? Is it like a losing Sylla purchase or a winning purchase? Anyway, so I'm going to talk about some basic stats with Sylla. And 2,700 gold is the cost for Armlet, and 2,600 gold is the cost, or 2,600 gold is the cost for Armlet, and 2,700 for Maelstrom. So they're roughly the same cost, and I'll pretty much refer to them as the same cost because 100 gold difference is not that big of a deal. So the earliest you can get this item is probably around 7 or 8 minutes in. If you farm very, very well, if you get fed first blood and all this nonsense, maybe a little bit earlier, but in a normal situation, any time before 10 minutes is pretty good. So in terms of stats, they actually give pretty close to the same amount of damage. A level 4 bear with level 4 rabbit and synergy has 73 damage on average. I think it's 68 to 78 and 1.04 seconds per attack. So around 1 second per attack, but that's with rabbit. So Maelstrom's 2,700 gold, and these are the stats it gives. Plus 24 damage, plus 25 attack speed, and 25% chance for 120 lightning damage, which actually hits 4 targets. So calculating this, 73 damage plus 24 damage, which is 97, and then 25% chance for 120 lightning damage. So on one target, it's around 30 damage per hit on average. And you divide it by the attack speed, which is 1.04 seconds with rabbit, and then increase that by 25%. It's around 157 single target damage per second, provided the target is not magic immune, and that's not factoring in armor, nor is it factoring in magic resistance. And as opposed to Armlet, which is 2,600 gold, 40 damage, so 16 more damage than Maelstrom, same attack speed. This is with it activated, by the way, not deactivated. And this rough calculation, 73 plus 40 is 113 damage divided by the attack speed, which is around 140 single target damage per second. So considering the procs is actually less damage than Armlet, but I've seen it gotten so much recently. I thought it was worth discussing. But on top of that, it also provides plus 5 armor, which is around 26% to 39% physical mitigation because the bear has 6 armor, as you can see right here, 6 armor plus 5, and then which makes its effective HP to physical damage 3650 to 4400. So that's actually a pretty big increase. That's like a 750 increase. So that's around 20% more resistant. 20% more effective HP against physical damage, which is very useful for things like towers, right clickers such as Nyx or Luna or Roshan. So this 5 armor is actually very, very useful because you're limited on slots on your bear and you won't get AC until later. And the Vlad's art does not stack with AC, so usually people get AC on it. On top of that, it provides 8 HP regeneration, and this last stat, the 25 strength and minus 40 HP a second, which is what most Armlet users will know it for, doesn't actually affect the bear at all. So notice, if I have this Armlet, this is toggled on, by the way. Toggled off looks like dark background. The pink background means it's activated, and you can see all this pink effect on the bear. It doesn't gain any HP from the strength gain, nor does it lose any HP per second. So it can actually just permanently toggle it on for the added benefits. So I'm not exactly sure if it's a bug or not, if it was like a game breaking bug and Ice Frog felt the need to change it, then I'm sure he would have already done it by now. But it's been in the game for a while, and people have known about it, and it's been popularized, and it's still in the game. So I think it's probably going to stay for a while. So doing the calculation, it gives less single target damage, 157 versus 140. So for that, and for like pure farming purposes, I think Maelstrom's usually better. But Armlet gives the bear a lot more survivability in the form of HP regeneration and armor. It's a little bit easier to build up because the most expensive part is the Helmet of Iron Will, which is 950 gold, as opposed to the hammer from Maelstrom, which is much more expensive. And also, this Maelstrom, the lightning proc has a couple of quirky things about it. Firstly, it doesn't work on towers, so this damage calculation only applies to non-magic immune targets. So if you're farming golems, if you're taking out towers, or if you're like killing Anakes, the damage will actually only be 97. So this 113 will outweigh the 97. Armlet will be more damage against magic immune targets, including buildings, which Bear is actually really good at taking out. Secondly, this Maelstrom is actually really good at taking out multiple targets, multiple non-magic immune targets, which includes like kobolds or creeps or whatever you may be farming that is not structures or not magic immune or magic immune heroes. So I think Maelstrom is much better for farming, but I mean it's pretty even as is. I think you get like a little bit more damage and AoE farming potential with Maelstrom, kind of like a Battle Fury for AM. It's similar to that. It just boosts your farm a lot, as opposed to Armlet. Armlet is it boosts your damage a decent amount and your attack speed, but it also makes your bear a lot more tanky. So your bear will also die a lot less with Armlet. And both has its pros and cons. I don't think it's extremely broken that Armlet doesn't actually give any of the negative effects when it's activated for Sylla Bear. I think it's about decent as is from doing just the basic math craft. It doesn't seem like ridiculously game breaking, even though I have heard a lot of people complain about it. I don't think it's actually broken or in need of a change, as opposed to well, another thing I want to talk about is Armlet a losing Sylla Bear purchase or like a winning Sylla Bear purchase? It's just a different build. Most people resort to a Maelstrom build when they can't really farm Radiance, but I see Sylla Bears who are doing really well even rush Maelstrom anyway. So there's not really like a winning build or a losing build. It's just preference, playstyle, what heroes you're up against. For example, if you're against Anakes, the Radiance damage won't work very well. So it's probably better to get armor and attack speed in the form of maybe Armlet or Maelstrom AC or some other build like that. And if you're just straight up pushing towers, again, Armlet is probably the best because the magic damage won't work on it. Radiance gives damage, but Armlet gives a lot of damage for much cheaper cost. So there's no like right or wrong answer as to which one's better. It's just preference, what heroes are in the game, how well you've been farming, etc. And the second question I got today, I'm going to get to today is pretty interesting question that has not actually been talked about that much. And this one is in regards to physical damage versus magical damage. It was a pretty long email, so I'll just summarize it. In Dota 2, there are basically two methods to inflict damage on an opponent. These are physical hit, right click, or to hit an opponent with a spell or ability. Ideally, in a balanced game, there should be a 50-50 ratio between physical and magic damage heroes/items available. I don't really actually know whether this 50-50 ratio is correct, but this is what the guy states in the question. And whilst there are many items to improve a player's right-click speed and damage output via Chrysalis, Desolator, Basher, Butterfly, Maelstrom, etc., there are very few items that can improve a player's spell damage. And he only names three. I believe there are only three: Veil of Discord, Ag Scepter, and EB. Ag Scepter is only available for some of the heroes too, not all of them. And then add him some lifesteal effects, and those basically reward right clicks. And he further on talks about how BKB is really strong against right click or against spell damage, as is Orchid. And of course, there's those spells that go through, but the only thing you can do against physical damage is either get armor or get Ghost Scepter, which has its drawbacks. Ghost Scepter making you more vulnerable to magic damage. So how do I feel about this, and do I feel like there should be a balance in between the two, and should anything be done about it? So I actually played Heroes of Neros for a little bit, and I talked about this in one of my other mailbags, but a couple things they did do right. I didn't actually like the game that much, but I feel like there are some things in Heroes of Newerth that were actually pretty good. And one of the things is the items. So they have 3 items that are not in Dota and that were not actually stolen, all stolen being used loosely, taken from Dota. And one of them is called Gnome's Wisdom. Gnome's Wisdom is pretty much a Vlad's for spellcasters. And it costs around the same, 2240, and it gives like armor and mana regeneration, but it also has an aura that has an effect. And I'll read it out in case you're seeing this at low res. Heroes are healed for 25% of the mana cost of abilities or items cast. Toggle abilities only count the initial cost. If the healing exceeds your max health, a shield of equal value is applied for life for 5 seconds. So this actually makes Int heroes a lot stronger because they can actually heal themselves by casting, and you don't actually need. It's like sort of like a kind of a lifesteal thing. You just gain HP whenever you cast a spell, which is actually pretty cool concept, I think. So that's one solution for that. Like, the more mana your spells cost, the more HP you gain, and even if you're at full HP, you still gain a protective shield. I actually think it's like a little bit of an imbalance item. It's very strong, but I don't actually know how it would import into Dota 2 or how well it would be, but it's still something to consider if you wanted like some sort of lifesteal for spellcasters. So another thing is called Spell Shards. It costs around 2,600, and it can actually be upgraded 2 times. So there's level 1s, 2, and 3, and it's 1,000 per recipe. And it's 3, 6, 9% reduced cooldowns. And this is actually very important. The only thing that reduces cooldowns in the game, item-wise, is Refresher Orb. I guess Ag Scepter too, but for any hero, it's just Refresher Orb. Also, it causes any magic damage you deal to ignore a percentage of their magic resistance, which is fairly similar to Veil of Discord, but Veil of Discord you have to cast on people, and it's AoE, and this is only single target, but it applies to all your spells, and you don't even need to think about it. It just works automatically. So this makes heroes like Zeus, like Lina, and all those good spellcasting magic heroes just do absurd amounts of damage, and it reduces all their cooldowns. Like 10%, almost 10% cooldown reduction is really high, especially when you consider that some of these heroes may have stuns. Being able to stun 10% more is pretty fucking good, and being able to do a lot more magic damage with all your spells without even having to worry about casting Veil or not getting someone in the AoE is pretty good. Veil does benefit your allies a little bit more, but this is still a very good item, and it causes Int heroes to scale a lot better into the game than they do in Dota. The last one I want to talk about is Harkon's Blade. This is like an orb effect for spellcasters. So it costs around 5,000. Takes like a Mystic Staff and some other stuff, Oblivion Staff, and a recipe. And what it does is your attacks do magic damage instead of physical damage, which means it gets reduced by magic armor instead of physical armor. And it also debuffs them so that they take more damage from magic on attack. And there's also some like nuances with it. It still allows you to target heroes with physical immunity. It allows you to target heroes with magic immunity and all that good stuff. But this is like a very interesting alternative to many of the other orb effects out there. And one hero that it's really good on, as I recall, is Storm Spirit, because he doesn't actually get any orbs, unlike most sort of carries, and he usually just relies on a really large mana pool. But with Harkon's Blade, he can actually do a lot more damage with his ultimate, with his overload, with his static remnant, as well as perhaps Orchid Malevolence and all those good items. And it allows your team to do a lot more damage to the target you're focusing on too. So it's pretty much like a Desolator or Stygian Desolator if you play Dota 1 for magic, which is actually pretty cool. And I think it's nice to have that because they have like single target physical armor mitigation, which is Desolator, and AoE, which is Assault Cuirass. But they only have AoE for magic damage, which is only the Veil of Discord, and single target could be perhaps Spell Shards or Harkon's Blade. So I do think like implementing additional items in the game could sort of alleviate this physical damage versus spell damage problem. And these are a couple ideas. I mean, they're already like pre-made and they've been out for quite a while, so I think they're fairly balanced. I'm not positive though. Some of the shit in Heroes of the North is pretty imbalanced. For example, Yule's Scepter you can just cast on any allies as opposed to just yourself and opponents. So that is something to consider, whether or not it would be imbalanced, and it would make the balance in between spell damage and physical a little bit. It would make the difference a little bit less. Also, Black King Bar actually has been remade and nerfed a couple of times. I don't know how long many of you guys have been playing Dota, but Black King Bar actually used to be 10 seconds at all durations. They didn't actually used to scale down as the game went on. So, or as you use it rather, not as long as the game goes on. So duration goes 10 all the way down to 5, and the cooldown also decreases as well. But it used to be 10 seconds, however many times you use it, and you used to be able to sell it. And now it's been changed so that it's not as powerful as it was before, but I'm sure some of you guys follow the competitive scene, and Black King Bar is like essential on a lot of heroes, and it's a very powerful item, and rightly so. But is it too powerful? It's slightly questionable whether or not it is, but I think any item that's like really, really imperative is perhaps slightly too powerful if there are no good alternatives. It's like a Hood of Defiance isn't going to save you from being stun locked, or pretty much any other item including Lincoln's, but Black King Bar will. So those are just some things to consider. Another thing I thought would also be cool is to have the ability to spell Critical Strike, and this has been a fairly popular thing in some like recent RPGs and stuff. So for Daedalus, it gives you Critical Strike, but only on attack. Grants a chance to deal critical damage on attack. But I think it would be pretty cool to have an item that would give you a chance to deal critical damage on a spell. And you could like crit people with Laguna, and that would do absurd amounts of damage. But I mean, these like late game heroes are just like one-shotting people, even one-shotting the whole entire team with, let's say, like a Kunkka with a rapier and Daedalus, or like a Gyrocopter with even non-rapier-ish items can still just completely demolish a team. So why shouldn't Spellcaster be able to do that? The only one that I can really think of at the moment is perhaps Obsidian Destroyer with lots and lots of intelligence items, or Zeus with like a Veil and Ags and Refresher. But other than that, like generally speaking, spells and spellcasters do not scale very well into the game. I'm talking about the pure damage ones, not the ones that have like a side effect like Light Strike Array that has a stun component. So that it obviously has to be balanced for that too. But those are just some things to consider. I think we haven't seen too many new items recently. I think like Abyssal's one of the newer ones. But most of these items have been around for a very long time, and I think it would be cool to have some new items. But again, I don't really want to upset the balance of Dota. Dota's been around for a very, very long time, and Ice Rock definitely knows what he's doing. And it seems like it's decently balanced. Like Magic and Spellcasters usually have more advantage early game, and late game heroes are generally geared towards like physical damage dealers. So I'm pretty satisfied with the way things are, but that doesn't mean that things could be better. So it's just some things to consider. And I know a lot of MMOs and RPGs have been shifting towards making spellcasters way more powerful into like higher levels and stuff like that. And Dota may or may not shift towards that in the future. So thanks everybody for watching. This will conclude Mailbag episode number 8.